Hey, everybody, welcome to the show today. I'm really glad you could join us. So, today we're talking about one of the most important topics, I think, when it comes to getting new customers that almost everybody ignores. And we're going to be diving into some really strategic things with marketing, especially diving in and talking about what you know about your audience and things like this that you should be doing to making sure that the marketing dollars you're spending are being spent on the right people and to maximize the impact that you get from those marketing dollars. So, with us today is one of the foremost experts on this topic, and I want to tell you a little bit about her. So the fundamental belief that bridging the gap between strategy and execution is foundational to breaking through the business inertia and propelling your business forward. And that's what drives Connie Steele. Now, Connie guides her business strategy and marketing consultancy, Flywheel Associates, using this premise. She knows it takes ongoing, consistent proof that your strategic direction makes sense and is working. With this belief, she has enabled her clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to startups to successfully reposition their organizations, meet their goals, and achieve rapid growth. Her cross-industry, cross-functional experience gives her a unique perspective on what it takes to navigate, mobilize, and realize change in organizations. Connie channels these insights on her internationally downloaded podcast, the Strategic Momentum Podcast, where she's shared valuable insights from world-renowned psychologists, corporate executives, entrepreneurs, and award-winning coaches who offer a unique context on how to create business momentum. She also shares her experience through contributions to Arianna Huffington's consumer well-being and productivity platform, Thrive Global, as well as other business-oriented podcasts as well. So Connie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Ty.
Well, I'm excited you're here. I mean, there's a lot of things in your expertise that we're going to dive into today. One of the things that I think stood out that I want to dive into in the beginning is talking a little bit about audiences. Because I think that people just mess this up. You know, everybody's focused on marketing and getting on Facebook and Google, and then they don't pay attention to who they're even marketing to, what that avatar looks like, who that customer is, and then a lot of their marketing fails, or they bring in the wrong kind of customer, and then that creates all kind of problems. So let's start there. I mean, how does somebody properly identify, their target audience?
Well, I think it comes down to determining, what business you're in, obviously, but then talking to your customers. Like many times, business owners assume they know who their target audience is. Well, that's fine. Let's start with that hypothesis. So then reach out to those folks, talk to them, understand, who they are, what motivates them to buy the products and services that you're selling, the emotional as well as the rational drivers. Where do they go to find that kind of information? And then based on that, you're going to get in real good insight as to whether or not you're aligned. So say, for example, you're a tech entrepreneur and you have this really cool online app and you think you're targeting, millennials that are 20 years old. But then, all right, so you reach out to them, you talk to them, and they're like, yeah, I have no use for this. I'm not sure why I'd want that. I'm not really on Facebook all the time. I actually am on Instagram. And maybe you spent all of your money on Facebook. Right there, you now know that, who I thought it was for probably wasn't right. So for me, one, you have a hypothesis, start testing your hypothesis by talking to people and asking them the who, the what, the why, the where, the when, and the how. That unto itself, that bit of data, will start to give you insight on whether or not you're on target or not.
Yeah. And it's a great idea because even in social media in general, I remember a time where I'm like, we got to be on all social platforms. But as I started to research, there are clearly different demographics between social platforms. So we're not on Snapchat because that's clearly not our demographic. But yet so many people go after that shiny object of Snapchat because it's the biggest thing without even realizing that's not even where the target audience even is. That's not even where they're hanging out.
Exactly. I think the fallacy that many people run into is that there's a quick win when it comes to marketing. And that's not true. There isn't a silver bullet. Every single marketing platform has its purpose. It's aligned to different audiences, and you have to understand whether or not that's relevant for your audience. And you can't understand that, or you won't know that until you talk to them, until you ask them, and really understand. I think, to me, it's that customer journey. So from the time they have this challenge or need for your product and service, where do they go? If they have this challenge, where did it even come from? And then where do they go to look for those kinds of solutions? Based on where they go, that already gives you an idea of where you would market. Maybe some of the information isn't on Facebook. That's not where they go. Where they go is they just type in a Google search. Where can I find this cool consumer app? Or they're looking for where can I solve the problem of which that consumer app delivers? And it could be on a review site. So the key thing is, how do I get in that review site? Or how do I write content such that when, your target audience or potential target audience searches for that on Google, it pops up. But to me, know your customer journey.
So where do you start this? I mean, where do you start getting, let's say, even the basic demographic information, male or female, age,
right,
where they live?
Right.
I mean, let's just start with the basics. Where does somebody even get the basics of who their target audience is?
Well, for many entrepreneurs who don't have maybe a detailed data background, honestly, it's what I had said earlier. You have a hypothesis. So I'm sure if anything, you have an idea if it's male or female, or maybe it could be both, but their general age range. That's important because we all know that there's generational differences. Somebody who's a millennial is different than a Gen Xer, is different than a boomer, different than a traditionalist. Then start to even think of geographic region, because geographies have different dynamics that can impact a decision. Then think of income, right? So how much something costs certainly has an impact on whether or not you're going to buy. So even if you start there, that's sort of a basic piece of information. So one, there's primary research. Start talking to those people who seem to reflect the audience that you're looking after, and go through all those questions that I had mentioned, is understanding from the beginning, what are your challenges in this space? Why do you have those challenges? And when you do, who do you talk to in order to get that kind of information on solutions? And even of the solutions maybe that you found, what isn't working? What do you wish you could have? Now, you could do the same thing from a secondary research perspective. So if you were to just Google search, because there's so much information out there on the web, on people who have this need, you could look at it by need, you could look by demographic, you could look by a lot of different things, but start to look at profiling information that's out there. Read it, take note of it. You're basically doing a research paper. I know not everybody enjoys that, but all you're doing is pulling information that exists already, and you're summarizing it to help formulate a story around these people. As you and I know, the importance of personas, right? And having that avatar, as you call it, you have to build it. And so whether you do it, whether you hire somebody to do it, it's data in order to build this profile. So you could do it really cheaply. Talk to somebody. It could be on the phone, it could be in person, or just do Google searching and collect the information and start to map out all that data. So it's one, you got the demographics. Two, think of the attitudinal information. Do I like it? Or I'm just negative towards things that are too expensive because I don't have any money, or I'm just a skeptic, which is an example of an attitude. Or emotions. Some people just tend to be more fear-based. They're really concerned about certain products because of the security risk. That's important to know. Reason being is that all that impacts your creative, what kind of images you use, the kind of colors, and your messaging. So you would never go out with aggressive messaging, for example, if you knew that the person you're going after is very cautious. They're concerned about the different options that are available because of skepticism, because they've seen people get swindled. So you wouldn't say, hey, you need this, and if you don't do this, then you're gonna get hacked. Wrong. Over. You just spent all this money and it's gonna be dead in the water right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. And one of the other things that I think is interesting that you kind of touched upon a little with social is that, it seems like when you start to put content on social, like we started to put videos on YouTube and Facebook page, they kind of help you too. They start to give you this demographic information. They tell you how the age and male and female and gender. I mean, it seems like, what do you think about that? Because that seems like a pretty good way to dip your toe into the water and start getting demographics if you're to that stage where you're putting information out in these social channels.
Absolutely. So the way I look at it is that, you first need to do your homework. You're getting a bit of that information, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of things that people need to understand in marketing is it doesn't have to be a big bang. It's never going to be perfect out of the gate, but get enough information that you've got a clear picture of who that could be. Then, to your point, put it out in social. Test it. You've got a hypothesis. See how it does. See if it resonates at all. And if it does, great, do more of it. Then you can refine it further because you've got all those parameters within Facebook. They can get you more and more and more targeted so you can determine who that audience is. But if you're not hitting the mark, maybe based on the data that you collected, that helps you determine where to pivot. Because the problem is that you put something out there, it doesn't work, but then you don't really know how to diagnose why, because you never did the homework from the beginning. So you're not able to pivot and adapt and test new things to help you get closer to your answer.
But it's hard, because as entrepreneurs, like we don't like homework. Like we just like to dive in and just go. And so I can see where this disconnect occurs. So how does this thorough understanding of the audience really help in business growth to begin? I mean, why is it so, you've hit on some of this, but I still want to make sure the audience understands why it's so important to start with the homework from the beginning. What does a path look like if they don't do that homework versus if they do?
So the short of it is money thrown down the toilet if you don't do your homework. So I think a lot of people believe that if you're not in market quickly, then you run the risks of not driving sales immediately. And that's a fallacy. The problem is that if you haven't done your homework and you put something out there, it doesn't work, and likely it won't, you've already wasted time and energy and money. And then you're stuck. You then don't know what to do next. So then you're going to continue to waste time. You're going to continue to throw more money at it, because I also believe that many people feel that if you throw more marketing dollars, that will solve the problem. It's about spend. It is absolutely not about spend. You can be incredibly efficient with a little bit of money, or honestly, it's not really spending much money on platforms. It may be your time to write content and putting it out there. So it really is being thoughtful. The reason why you do this foundational work and build that strategy is so that it saves you headaches and money in the long run. Because, if you are lured by the bright, shiny object, you're going to continue to be lured by the bright, shiny object. You could have wasted a year, spent thousands of dollars, and you feel like you're still not going anywhere. So it's better to spend a month. Maybe it's 2 months. Maybe it only takes you 2 weeks. But you have something that you can go back to know how to pivot. But 2, for those who have the ability to hire vendors, you can direct them. Because the thing is, many marketing vendors are just going to do what you tell them to do. And when they say, hey, you know what, it doesn't work because this is what you told us, but I don't know what to necessarily do next. You're still stuck.
And, I think what's so interesting about that is that this is the problem a lot of people get into, is that they want to rush to market. They market, it doesn't work. And then they say it doesn't work. Facebook ads don't work. But the reality is, like you said, they're running the ads to completely the wrong audience. What are the resources? Are there resources or tools that are out there that can help people with the collecting of this data that they need to get to really hone in on who their target audience is?
There are survey tools, for example, like SurveyMonkey, which people could do a very quick survey or poll they could put on their site. That's one way. But candidly, rather than adding another tool, because I personally, am exposed to all these tools. I use different tools. I'm sure you two do too. There's a learning curve there. For me, I really like to get down to basics. And the best way to do that is engage with the people that you know or you believe could be the ones that you're going after. just even doing 5 interviews with a broad set of people that could be it, could then help you formulate a really good sense of whether or not you're on point or not. And some of that just starts with you writing down, what are all the questions that I have? And if you take that time to think about every possible question or the things that you're struggling with and get their opinion, you'll be amazed at the kind of learning that you would get to help direct you. A lot of people just don't know. They make assumptions. And I think, if you have to understand the why behind the buy. So if anything, if folks are struggling with, I don't know what kind of questions to ask, I'm not sure what a moderator's guide would be. Well, start with a few. Tell me about yourself, why you select the products that you do, how you go about finding it, and then after their response, hone in on the why. Why? That will uncover so much for you. So even if you don't have time, you don't want to go on Google and pull all this data and read through that, talk to people. You are not your audience. You have to remember that.
Yeah, very, very, very true. And you know what? I think it's just they just got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And we embed a survey into our prospecting sequence that we've had in there for years. And, we go back to it from time to time and we're still surprised hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have now filled it out. But every time we hear a good question, we add the question, right? Like, what podcast do you listen to?
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense. If you just start somewhere and start doing something, then you can always just expand off that, it sounds like, and then, the bigger your organization gets, the more information you're getting. And then you have an avatar that's 2 lines to a page long.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that I would share as advice, be agile, be nimble. Don't think that you have to ask the world. Just start with a few things, and that's okay. I'm a mentor to a bunch of startups, in DC, and the question they always ask me, it's like, oh, well, I want to do Facebook marketing. Okay, let me understand your product first. So before I can even think about that, tell me about your product. Who are you going after? All the questions we talked about, and inevitably, they come back and it's not very well defined. Well, what kind of homework have you done to understand why Facebook would be the right thing? Do you even know what you'd say on Facebook? What would the message even be to get somebody to buy your product? They're not even sure. So clearly you're not ready to even put something out there yet if you're not, you don't have an idea of what you'd want to message that would lure them in. Because if you just said, oh, I think it could be A, I think it could be B, I could be C, let's just throw it all out there. Yes, it could be cheap, but you just kind of threw spaghetti on the wall, truly, and you have no idea what sticks. There's no thought behind it.
And it's so hard because, to write a marketing message for a millennial versus somebody,
exactly,
it's impossible. If I read that message, it would never speak to me. So if I'm your target audience, that makes no sense if you're trying to market towards people you don't even know who it is.
And such a great point. I think that, for example, by talking to a millennial, so say that you, a product or service that you have, you're saying, well, it's really for everyone. Because you and I know that many people say that, oh, I got a great product that could be for everybody. Well, talk to everybody then. Listen to how millennial talks and say, hey, how would you sell that to me? Let them pitch it. Then talk to a Gen Xer. Then talk to a boomer. You can then get an idea of what the messaging would be, but then intuitively you get a sense of what that tone is as well. But what's also valuable, as you talk to people, they're going to say some great things that you realize, ooh, I like that line. Oh, I love the way you articulated that. Basically, I would record their conversation. Just ask them to do it. And then you can transcribe it. But many times they use great words and great descriptors for what it is you do. They kind of gave it to you. They already gave you a bit of a platform to start marketing your product. So for those of you who are really concerned about not being a good writer, not being very creative, not even knowing where to start, let your audience tell you. You've collected all that information. Then maybe you feel like you can start, or you can hire a resource and tell them, here's a learning that I got. You have now educated your vendor to be more strategic and how they target that person, because they're looking for that same information from you. So if you're not able to direct the people that are helping you, they're only going to be as good as that information. And again, it's garbage in, garbage out.
It's so true. And, on one of the surveys that we have that I mentioned, we ask what keeps you up at night. And what's interesting is that we use their exact languaging in all of our marketing, because they're all saying the same thing. It's eerie how many of them say the same buzzwords exactly over and over. And so then we use every single one of those in our marketing. Why talk to them about the problem from our perspective when we could take their exact language and use that to speak to them about the problem? And you know how that works out in the end when you do that.
Absolutely. And you know what also you get from that? You get prioritization of the key problems that you need to communicate to your audience. And you've somewhat validated that over time because you hear the same thing over and over and over again. And so it doesn't mean that you have to sample 500 people to get a statistically significant answer. You could do 5 people at a time every month. And if you get the same consistent feedback, then you're on the right track. But now hey, what are maybe the 3 most important things I need to highlight on my website? Maybe you don't know. Start with 3, but constantly get feedback. And then after a month or 2 months or however frequent you end up polling them, you'll get your answer and you can tweak it, but let them tell you the answer. Don't assume you know it.
Well, and I think this is interesting about Avatar, because I'm a big Avatar fan, but not the movie, maybe not so much, not to build a whole land in Disney about it, but that's a whole different topic. So I'm really big on building avatars, but I think you have this whole 360-degree view, you call it, where Absolutely. You're really looking at the motivations, the behaviors, the drive, what drives them to take action. Most people do not think of avatars like this. They think of avatars as, where are you from? What's your age? Are you male, female? I mean, that's the limit of their avatar information. So how important is this 360-degree view to really understanding their behaviors and what actually drives them?
So the reason why it's so important is that what folks don't realize is that many times you make decisions, it's not off of rational behavior. It's off of emotions. Your emotions, how you feel towards something, is what triggers a why buy. So if you look at products strictly off of features and functionality, iPhone, Android phone, right? People have such an emotional attachment to your iPhone. They do the same thing. They help you make calls. They help you manage your life. You can search on the web. Functionally, they are exactly the same. But the emotional payoff that you get and the attachment to them can be very, very different. So they have a preference for one over the other. It's the same thing with all kinds of products. Let's think about food, cupcakes. Why do you go to one cupcake shop, for example, or why are people, so avid about, in our area, Georgetown Cupcakes, or, there's some other cupcake stores that are across the country. Because when they see that triggers this nostalgia or this feeling like, oh my God, I love that. I have happiness when I eat that. So, if there happens to be a deal on those cupcakes, which are not cheap, I'm going to buy. So when that promotion comes out in the mail and you're like, 20% off, click. Because I know it's that emotional trigger. I think many people assume decisions are based off of features and functionality and price. It's not reality anymore. Most of the products out there, or services, if you look at it, and you were to line everything up, on a basic level, they all do the same thing. So what is it? What is that extra special sauce that causes somebody to veer towards one choice versus another? It's the emotional attachment. And how do you get that? That is by getting the 360-degree view of that person. So yes, you could be, a middle-aged woman living in the DC area. There are many of us. But what is it emotionally that causes me to want to go towards one thing or another? What is that payoff that I get? Do I feel confident? Do I feel secure? Do I feel at peace? That's what you're trying to tap into. I think if you look at messaging from a lot of these different tech companies and you look at Apple, what they talk about is fulfillment and fun. Yes, you've got the feature, but the feature gives you something emotionally that causes you to want to use it. And I think that's why it's so critical.
Sure. Yeah, and we look at that as there's a feature and there's a benefit, but then there's a benefit of the benefit, and the benefit
emotional benefit.
Yeah, that's how it really impacts your life. Like you saves you money is the benefit, but then like what do you do with that extra money? It's the vacation with your family and all those things. Which, by the way, I'm a Sprinkles Cupcakes fan. Have to throw that out. Now, like, I've been drooling because I'm thinking about. You just got me thinking about cupcakes, which is not a good thing to do.
See, you're happy though, so
I'm very happy. I just went this weekend. I go to Orlando like just to go to Sprinkles to have like their red velvet cupcake sundae with peanut butter ice cream in between. It makes me really happy.
Right. So that you have now such an emotional attachment that they know they have you when you go into town. But, another tool, and I always think about tools and how people can help think through people's decision making. One thing is called, a benefits hierarchy, which you may be aware of. So think of a pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid, it's the features. So if you're to lay out products and services, what are the features that you offer? Then if you think the next rung or the next tier in this pyramid, what benefits do you deliver? What's interesting is what most people will say, the benefits are what I call functional benefits. It's what it does for you, not how it makes you feel. There's actually a higher order level, and a lot of things we call this laddering. You're laddering up to a higher order benefit. So if we take cupcakes, right? So it's sweet, it's savory, but it tastes good. The benefit is that it tastes good. Sure, it should taste good. But then there's another benefit too. All cupcakes should taste good. Otherwise, these cupcake companies wouldn't be in business. So then what? Why do you choose Sprinkles? There's something when you taste it, it probably just makes you feel happy, right? There's this pleasure. There's this fulfillment. There's this satiation that you get with that cupcake that you don't get with others. So what you're doing is you're trying to identify what that is. You take that notion and you integrate that into your creative. You integrate that into your communications. Because how can you play off of this feeling of satiation, right? Fulfillment, happiness. Yes, it could be showing a bunch of cupcakes, but maybe it's showing a child or a parent who are like in heaven. Or maybe you're even showing this, nirvana of heaven for them. Because that is triggering a sort of a subliminal feeling and thought that they have. So now again, I'm fixated on cupcakes too.
No, I stop talking about cupcakes, please. But it makes sense. I mean, look, you got the cupcake. The feature is that it's got this icing, and then the benefit is that it tastes good. But then the real benefit of the benefit is what you want, which is that how does it make you feel?
Exactly.
Get that, and then you could tune the marketing to speak to that. Then like you're hitting them at this deep emotional level that most marketing doesn't hit. But in order to even get there, you have to understand their why. You have to understand these motivating things. Now, you, I think, refer to this as the 5 W's and an H, which we should all know what that is. But talk a little bit more. I mean, what's the basic components that you have to have with this 5 W and H that you need to know to even begin to sniff out the information you need to speak directly to that customer?
It is some of those things I mentioned before, who, what, when, where, why, and then how. If you just start with those, you're going to get a lot of information. And then the why, though, is the thread that really connects it all. So again, keep on asking why. Your audience or the person that you're interviewing may be sick and tired of being like, well, why do you keep on asking me that? But they'll then respond with a different layer, a different perspective that you wouldn't have ever gotten unless you probe further and further and further. So, there's this amazing research company that I work with that actually does this for as one of the services they have. So they do it in a very scientific way. And so there's a technique called means end, but they were using an example of a car and why some women don't want to drive a minivan. And so what is it about a minivan versus an SUV? Like, well, I don't like the shape. Okay, well, what is it about the shape that you don't like? Well, I think the shape or just the look of it makes me feel old. Well, why does it make you feel old? Well, because of this, right? And so you now have all these associations with like why a person wouldn't buy a minivan or why they prefer an SUV or the style of an SUV that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise when you said, well, I'm just going to target a middle-aged mom with kids.
It's very true. And I have a mentor of mine, Dave Freeze, and it's interesting because I sat in one of his conferences and saw this. There's this Tyson, who's now a friend of mine, rough Australian guy. And I want to explain this because people don't understand this linking of why, which is like extremely valuable. And so he asked me, so, well, why are you doing what you do? And the guy's like, I'm doing this to make money, right? I want to grow the business. Well, why do you want to grow the business? I want to make more money. Well, why? And this is what you mean by the why. Why do you want to make more money, right? Well, I want to make more money so I have more time to spend with my family. Well, why does that matter? And he got to about the fourth or fifth. And this guy then just spilled, right? Like then he just spills of how much spending time with his family means. He completely breaks down into tears and runs out of the room. And we're all like, oh my gosh, like the fact that any of that just happened in front of us, but it was the most interesting lesson on why just asking, well, why is that important? Or, and, well, look, here's why I want to do this. Well, and then you get to that third or fourth or fifth end, they're like, rip it up. And they're like, okay, here's what's really going on. And they just start telling you all of this information that like is mind blowing because it's almost like nobody ever cared enough to dig that deep.
Exactly.
And then like they recognize that you care enough. It's like that person that says, well, where's your day at work? And then they're blowing you off when you're answering, they're not really interested. But those people that are really interested, you want to talk to them. You're excited that they want to know. So this is so powerful, this when, why, and the real answers it gets to, that people are self-discovering themselves answers that they didn't even know. And that's why I think that it's so valuable because you're getting to their real why when many times, I don't know about what you've seen, but I've seen they don't even know the real why. It's like this moment where they realize it with you, and then that bond deepens at a point that in a way that I've just never seen ever exist beyond that.
100% agree. And when you dig that deep, you're getting to that authentic person. And the thing that you'll realize, for all those entrepreneurs out there, when you ask the why of your customers, that shows you care, that there's an authenticity about your products and services and the way you do business that will really connect with them versus it coming across as transactional. Because that's where, honestly, a lot of the messages are transactional. Buy this now. We're on sale. We've got this feature. We're better than the others. And this is because we have X, Y, and Z. Okay, so what? But if you're able to communicate in a way that touches them, that gets at a deeper level, it makes them think like, wow, you really do know me. You care. You're trying to build that authentic relationship. And we all know to build a business is about relationships these days. It's not about the transaction.
It's very true. Yeah.
So you need to connect what I call, it's the head, the heart, and the gut. A lot of people act with their gut. They don't even realize they're acting with their gut. But when you understand all those three dimensions, and that's actually the core of branding. I think a lot of people think branding or building a brand is about, I got this cool logo, I got these images, and I look nice and sexy and out there. I'm like, The brand is fundamentally knowing what do you stand for. And what you stand for many times isn't the thing. It has nothing to do with the thing. It's about what you can deliver. Disney, their payoff, their essence is magical fun. It's not the thing. It's not the rides, but you walk away and you're like, oh God, this was such a fun experience, but it was just, something that was a little out of this world. It had that extra special thing that I can't get anywhere else. That's what guides them, that essence of magical fun. That could be what your product and service does. So when you're able to determine that essence, that positioning, that feeling, you thread that through everything that you do. So the way you act, the way you talk, the way you market, that reflects you. And then people know what you stand for. Because I think the other challenge that we always see is that folks are like, yeah, I see what you got there, but I don't really know what you do. Because you're not consistent. All you're doing is selling. You're pushing. And these days, push marketing, not good. Pull marketing, right? Draw them in. Give them a valuable reason why they should go with you, why they should care, and that they feel like they get something out of it. It's because it's for them. It's not for you. And if you're going to be transactional, they're going to sniff that immediately.
Yeah, it's so true. And doing this exercise that you're describing with Avatar, like, helped us realize that for us, what we sell is hope. It's crazy, right? I mean,
yeah.
But that's ultimately, I mean, what we do is we empower business owners to give them the capital they need and what they do with that and the hope and the ideas they have when they can have that money. And so we've really been able to boil it all down to hope. And as you described, it's way different selling hope than it is selling business credit. And if you don't get that,
Well, we see these, I see these commercials all the time on TV. It said, oh, if you need credit, contact us and, we'll get you there quickly and we'll get it there fast. But to have a relationship of somebody offering you money, that's an important relationship. You want to know that you trust that person and that they're invested in helping you build your business just as much as you are. So by saying you're about hope, to me, that means you're in it to build a partnership. That has so many more legs to it. And it also then evokes this feeling of you're more likely to be a person I can trust than the next guy. And then in their gut, they're like, oh, I'm not sure which one's right. And it's a trust issue. It comes down to a trust issue. But if you communicate, we're about hope, that linkage, you're now closer to probably pulling that customer in.
Connie, it's been amazing having you on today. Anything we haven't covered that we probably should dive into that the listeners and watchers could that they could get something out of, or anything I missed, basically?
I don't think so. I guess there's one thing left. It's making sure that you focus. So you can't do everything. I know everybody wants to do absolutely everything, try all this stuff, and see what sticks. Many times you don't have the budget. So be mindful and smart about that. So that's why doing your homework is important, so that you don't feel like you have to try everything and anything. The other piece, which we should talk about when it comes to audience, is focus on who it is. I know a lot of people want to say they could target 3, 4, 5, 6, however many. The reality is that you can't be all things to all people. Start small. Focus. Allocate your dollars so that if you could do one thing really well, or fine, maybe let's say 2, but create that focus, then you're going to be better at doing it again and again, and then you can expand. But if you're literally going for everything from the beginning, you're bound to waste a lot of money up front. So I always have this mantra it's about starting small, be iterative, test and learn, and pivot along the way, because you don't know what's going to work from the very beginning. And if all marketers say that I'm guaranteed to give you results, I know I can give you leads. Sure, they could give you leads, but they might give you 1 lead when you're thinking they're going to give me thousands of leads, but they'll still say, I give you a lead, right? You have to be focused so that you have spent a good investment, or have you allocated the right amount of money to have a valuable payoff.
Amazing advice today. Beyond the fact that I now have to go to Orlando to get cupcakes. It's been awesome having you on. Where can everybody go to learn more on this topic and learn more from you?
Sure. So you can go to my website, It's flywheelassociates.com. There's an insight section that has various articles that I've written about. You can also email me directly if you'd like at csteele@flywheelassociates.com. And if there's any other business perspective on how to get unstuck, I also have my own podcast called the Strategic Momentum Podcast, which you can find on most podcast directories.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Connie. It's been awesome having you on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
So everybody, I can't tell you the importance of this. I mean, if you don't know who your audience is, as Connie said, you are wasting so much time, energy, and money chasing the wrong people and doing the research, gathering the information in advance. It's so easy to do. She's given you many different ways to do it, many different points of information you could fairly easily get. Let's be honest, in a world of social media, it's easier than ever to get information about your potential audience or about your audience. So remember, this doesn't mean anything unless you actually take action on it. So make sure you visit flywheelassociates.com. That's flywheelassociates.com. I'm going to make sure that link is on the show resources page and dive in. There's so much amazing information there about this topic and also about what to do next, right? We've talked a little bit about building the avatar, building the customer, but you need to know how to take that information and use that to craft messages and craft really customized marketing for that audience. These are the type of things that Connie talks about all the time through her articles and through so much other content on her website. So make sure that you check out flywheelassociates.com. This is the foundation before you even think about spending money on marketing. So if you're not, do this first. If you are, stop, go back, learn this information, and then get back. You'll get such greater return on your investment if you're doing this. So again, Connie, thanks for coming on. Been awesome having you on the show. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure you visit flywheelassociates.com for more information. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.